So, ladies and gentlemen, the Washington Post has flipped the script. Remember Usual Suspects, Benicio del Toro? They flip you. They flip you for real. Totally flip the script and flip the story. What is the story? Let me get the headline out there first. The same Washington Post that told us months ago that any allegations that the Wuhan virus may have leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China, and not have naturally occurred in the environment at the wet market. Those were conspiracy theories. You're all nuts. And Tom Cotton, Republican senator, suggested it. He's a conspiracy theorist, and no one should take this guy seriously. That was the Washington Post. The democracy dies in the darkness, Washington Post, although they are the darkness, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Magically, Joseph, they've now flipped the script. This is crazy. How did that happen? Article in the same Washington Post, yesterday by Josh Rogan. Same one, kids, same one. Now, Josh Rogan, Washington Post columnist, says State Department cables warned of safety issues at Wuhan lab studying bat coronaviruses.
No. Come on.
Come on, guy.
Man,
I thought this was a conspiracy
true.
theory.
On,
We're all
guys.
crazy. Ooh, crazy time.
Dude.
Why? Now, as always with this show, me telling you the media lies to you all the time, doesn't know what they're talking about, are largely ignorant of foreign policy, economics, financial markets, current affairs, law enforcement issues, and elsewhere, is not a mystery. The fact that the media are not bright is not news and is not worthy of 2 seconds on the show because you already know that. The question always with the media is motive. Why did they do what they did? Let's read from the piece first, because I want to be clear. These new cables that they're getting about there may have been a dangerous condition in the Wuhan lab that was studying coronaviruses, Joe. These cables are not new. In other words, somebody who leaked these cables, because Josh Rogan, the columnist for the Washington Post, is not a State Department insider. In other words, he didn't have access to these cables. Somebody leaked them. You tracking?
Right, yeah.
These are old, though. They're not from last week. These cables are from months ago. So why flip the script and report on them now? And why leak them now? The deep state. That's another conspiracy theory. Let's go to the Washington Post piece. 2 years, quote, 2 years before the novel coronavirus pandemic upended the world, U.S. Embassy officials visited a Chinese research facility in the city of Wuhan several times and sent 2 official warnings back to Washington about inadequate safety at the lab, which was conducting risky studies on coronaviruses from bats. Wow. Damning new evidence. The cables have fueled discussions inside the U.S. government about whether this or another Wuhan lab was the source of the virus, even though conclusive proof is yet to emerge. So, just to be clear, the same Washington Post that printed this garbage, this other headline from the infamous Paula Farazi, who will now live in infamy for writing this stupid piece. Headline, Paulina for whatever her name. I don't even care. Tom Cotton keeps repeating a coronavirus conspiracy theory that was already debunked. She writes, Cotton repeated a fringe theory, Joe, suggesting that the ongoing spread of the coronavirus is connected to research in the disease-ravaged epicenter of Wuhan. So the journal...
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so holding it in because I can't take it anymore. That's... Really... these are the people, again, who are calling me and all my listeners, you're all nuts. You're all fringe lunatics. So we were right. You're acknowledging now you were wrong. Now, the question many of you, I know Joe and Paul are asking right now is, well, if the State Department leakers who leaked that information to the Post that, yes, that Wuhan lab is big trouble, if they've had this information for 2 years, why leak it now? In other words, Joe, if the Washington Post was doing real journalism, which they never are, why not, when Tom Cotton suggested a credible, established, sincere United States senator from Arkansas, but who happens to be a Republican, When he first leveled that allegation, because he does have access to information the Washington Post does not, that, hey, this virus may have originated in a lab accident or a lab infection that was unintended. Why not do your homework then? Shake some trees, go get your sources, your deep state sources, and then find out, oh my gosh, Tom Cotton could be right. We have these cables that have been around for 2 years. Why not do that? Let's think this through. Because the Washington Post is, I purposely bleeped myself. I hope your kids can't read lips if you're watching us at YouTube. It rhymes with hit. They are garbage. They have always been garbage, run by garbage people and garbage journalists who do garbage work. Back when Tom Cotton said that, you have to remember and go back and put yourself in the whatever the media narrative was of that time, not the media narrative now. What's the media narrative now? Remember, a story they're telling you, but not the story. A story they're telling you now is Trump dropped the ball. He knew this thing was going to be a deadly virus, and he did nothing. Trump lied, people died. That's their fake narrative now, but that wasn't their fake narrative back in January and February when this thing was raging in China. Their fake narrative then, because they didn't know how serious it was going to be, their fake narrative then, Joe, was, listen, Trump's just trying to blame China right now. Trump's just really stupid. China's not at fault. That was their narrative then. So any story out there, and many of you forgot that, their narrative back then is Trump is scapegoating people. He's scapegoating China. Because, why, Joe? Because the narrative back then, remember, was because Trump's a racist and a xenophobe. Because they felt the media, which is, get it? Rhymes with hit, which is hot garbage, thought a more effective story, not the story, again, a story, is Trump's a racist. Never realizing this was going to become a serious pathogen. They know they can use identity politics lies to attack Trump. The fact that China is obviously populated by people from China. They can use an identity politics attack and say, oh my gosh, Asians, racism. Trump is scapegoating China, and so is that evil fringe theory lunatic Tom Cotton. It is racist, xenophobic, and absurd to suggest that this virus may have leaked from a lab. Same Washington Post, folks. Same. We did not manipulate those headlines. It's not a joke. It's not The Onion. This is not the Babylon Bee. All of a sudden, this gets really serious. The media starts to figure out that the public is starting to turn on the Chinese government, not the Chinese people, but the Chinese government, because they're starting to say, my gosh, this is really starting to break out in Washington, starts to hit in New York. All of a sudden, it's declared a pandemic, and the United States citizenry is on fire. And all of a sudden, Trump's anti-Chinese government, not Chinese people, travel bans, and Republican Tom Cotton's what was perceived as anti-China rhetoric at the time is now turning into a political benefit. And the Washington Post, which smells this and says, we need a new narrative now. Let's now stop talking about China, calling out China, Joe, maybe xenophobic, because that'd help Trump now. In other words, not that Trump's xenophobic, but that Trump called out China and so did Tom Cotton. We have to bury that story now. Now what happens? Now the deep staters come in. You know the deep staters. That's a fringe theory. The deep staters who had access to these cables for years, that the Wuhan lab may have been a source of some serious biosafety issues. Now when they need to flip the script to the new narrative because it's serious, it's so serious and Trump dropped the ball, they scrapped the old fake story. They introduced a new story. Everybody knew how dangerous this was all the time. Even the State Department people and these other representatives who sent cables saying how bad this was, and Trump ignored it. Now the deep staters come forward and start leaking the information they could have leaked a month ago, but that would have made the Washington Post look bad and Trump look good.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.